Okay, can I start? By way of placing George's piece in context, I've been asked to say a few words about protest art and its effectiveness as an agent of social change. My first observation is that in an economy driven by consumption, in which everybody is conditioned from birth to buy, the very act of making a thing of the hand and heart is an act of protest. Stepping outside the cycle of consumerism to communicate to one's fellow human being through the vehicle of art, be it music, performance, painting, or sculpture, is an act of resistance. Now, George's work follows in a long and storied tradition. Here's an image from a work he did satirizing the former president of Capilano College, Nurse Bullcroft, she who destroyed Cap's art program unilaterally while taking her pet poodle to work. It's linked to the scathing early 19th century caricatures of the legal profession by Honoré Daumier. Some of you may have noticed these in the lawyer's office you've likely visited in your struggles against TMX. From the same period, we also have Theodore Géricault's painting, Raft of the Medusa, which showed the 15 survivors of the wreck of the French frigate Méduse, which ran aground off the coast of Mauritania. The disaster caused a scandal as it pointed to the incompetence of the royalist-appointed French captain who abandoned the raft and its occupants after a few miles of towing it. In the 13 days before their rescue, the desperate survivors resorted to murder, suicide by drowning, and cannibalism. The incident became a huge scandal for the recently restored French monarchy. Because its cargo contained slaves destined for Europe, the painting also became an icon of the abolitionist movement. You might notice that the figure at its apex is a black man, painted from a Haitian model named Joseph. The picture so enraged the French government that it refused to purchase it, although it had won a gold medal at the Paris Salon where it first appeared. It might also surprise you to learn that this neoclassical painting by Jacques-Louis David, better known for Napoleon on his horse, this painting is called The Oath of the Horatii. It depicts an ancient Greek scene of allegiance swearing. It helped ignite the French Revolution by encouraging illegal republican sentiments in an era when loyalty to the monarchy was law. George's work also links with the ancient tradition of carnival, where once a year the streets of Europe were filled with massive puppets of the rich and powerful, while little boys paraded around town as kings for a day, and donkeys wore bishop's robes and held mass. In Europe, those at the top of the social heap expected ridicule was the price of power, but thin-skinned Canadian worthies allow no such leeway for an occasional laugh at their expense. One of the legacies of colonialism is always having to say you're sorry, or it's off to the slammer for wearing a dinosaur suit, or should I say, a sorry sir suit to the sit-in. In contemporary times, artists have used art to disrupt the status quo by numerous means. In the midst of the Vietnam War, when US bombs were killing thousands of Vietnamese peasants every year, Yoko Ono performed Cut Piece. As this tiny Asian woman artist sat motionless, audience members were invited to take a pair of scissors and cut pieces of her clothing off her until she was nearly naked. Likewise, in 1973, Chris Burden performed 747 by firing a pistol at a passing Boeing 747. Both these works take the subjective role of the victim. Women artists in the 1970s made work that challenged gender roles and the role of art itself in sometimes shocking and previously unimaginable ways. In interior scroll, for example, Carolee Schneemann read a text offering a feminist critique of a male filmmaker's work, which she carefully pulled while naked from her vagina. Yeah. For her part, Barbara Kruger deployed Soviet-era style posters that critiqued power relations from the battlefields of women's bodies to the tyranny of consumerism. And then there were the one-sentence aphorisms of Jenny Holzer, who observed from T-shirts and the electronic billboard in Times Square that the abuse of power comes as no surprise. Holzer also invited us to consider that it's private property that creates crime. While art can't pass motions apportioning a greater share of civic budgets to housing the homeless, it can give visibility to causes that would otherwise go unnoticed. Some of you will remember the days when the AIDS epidemic was a secret death sentence confined to the community of sufferers, largely gay men, and their immediate families. That was until they began building the AIDS quilt. Suddenly, this massive collaborative art project that stretched over several football fields made visible the enormity of the crisis, helping to spur public officials in Reagan-dominated Washington, as well as private donors, to find a treatment. One of my favorite works of protest art was done by the Russian group Voynia. Under cover of darkness, they painted a giant red penis on the road running over a bridge in Moscow. By day, when the bridge was raised to let ships pass through, the penis stood straight up in full, defiant view of KGB headquarters across the street. The dream of a fossil fuel-free world likewise got a boost when the bike-riding dinosaurs pedaled around the streets of a major city. Okay, sorry. During Trump's administration, Mexicans made their feelings known by burning him in effigy. Yes, and the dream of a fossil fuel-free world likewise got a boost when bike-riding dinosaurs pedaled around the streets of a major city. And just recently, Ukraine's supporters humiliated Moscow's London embassy staff by pouring hundreds of liters of blue and yellow paint on the street in front of it. And to return to feminist action, Pussy Riot recently performed Putin's Ashes. So although it can't legislate guaranteed incomes or settle land claims, art in the service of protest is pretty good at treating and creating common cause among activists and making everyone feel better when rubber and rhetorical bullets are flying. In closing, you may be interested in knowing that George and I share an interesting history. In 1990, I walked into his classroom at Capilano College, now Capilano University, wanting to learn something about sculpture, having spent 10 years as a courtroom illustrator for CTV and CBC News. Little did I know that I'd stumbled into the studio of one of Canada's most accomplished artists. 3 years later, I went on to get a degree at the University of Washington and then a teaching position at Emily Carr, where I've been since. As a courtroom illustrator, I drew hundreds of judges, and not all of those drawings were flattering. But now it's George who's doing the courtroom illustrating and me who's doing the teaching. So sitting in front of this work, I feel we've come full circle. The sculptor's student has returned to pay tribute to the teacher's masterpiece of judicial satire. Thank you, George, for employing your exceptional talent to give us all a little comic relief from some of the dinosaurs who populate our courts.